Introducing the Italian Grape Geek program, a new and original approach to Italian wines. IGG, as it's fondly known, is a book, a podcast, an online theory course, and an in-person tasting course. Our pocket-sized book briefly introduces 80 grapes with benchmark producers, helping you find and taste these great wines on your own. Space to make your own notes makes the book a personal record of your Italian wine journey. No time to read? We've read the whole book out loud with added insights from Italian wine ambassadors. Listen for free on Italian Wine Podcast. Obsessed with Italian wine? Take the super accessible online theory course. Get certified as an Italian grape geek. Want more? Our international IGG educators have got your in-person tasting course to cap off your full IGG immersion. Go to mamajumboshrimp.com and sign up today.
Kuala Lumpur, which is our capital city, is a key hub where all the fine dinings, wine bars, luxury hotels, and premium retails are concentrated. Beyond KL, Penang up north is actually very important for its food-driven culture. Even though it's just a very small island, but the culture of the food there is amazing. While Johor Bahru down south, the capital city of Johor State actually benefits from the proximity to Singapore. And towards the East Malaysia, especially this state called Sabah, and then the capital city is called Kota Kinabalu, has growing potential in resorts and hotels due to our tourism, because it has a lot of nice nature reserve and some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. The food and beverage scene there is actually growing. So these are the four major cities that play a very big role in our market.
Welcome to Asia Wine Market, the series that takes you inside the most dynamic and fast-evolving wine markets across Asia. I'm your host, Roza, and in each episode, we'll uncover the stories, trends, and opportunities shaping the future of wine in this vibrant region. Whether you're a winery looking to expand in Asia or a wine professional exploring global trends, this series is for you. Hello everyone and welcome to Asia Wine Market series. 2 weeks ago we talked about Japan wine market, and today we're going to talk about Malaysia and Malaysian wine consumers. To help us understand the Malaysian market, we're joined by Casey Tay. Casey is an experienced sommelier, wine and cheese expert, and the treasurer of the Sommelier Association of Malaysia. He works as an educator, consultant, and hosts wine dinners and tastings. Casey has represented Malaysia on international stages in several professional competitions. And he is also, which is very important for us, he's also the winner of Best Sommelier for Italian Wine in Malaysia 2024. So today he joins us to share his insights into the Malaysian wine market and the opportunities for Italian wines. So welcome, Casey. We're very happy to have you here today.
Hi, Rosa. Thank you for having me here today.
We're very delighted to have you here today. Before we move on to our main focus of today's conversation, could you please walk us through your journey into the wine industry? What do you do now? And also, how did Italian wine become such a central part of your professional focus?
Okay, well, cool. Just maybe I start with everyone to share about what I'm doing now. So I'm currently a wine consultant and also who provide sommelier on the floor service for a Thai restaurant in KL. So this Thai restaurant is focused on more like modern style of Thai food instead of the traditional one. So it's actually awarded as a Michelin one-star restaurant in KL. So basically I'm overlooking the whole beverage program. So not just wines, but also spirits, cocktails, and also the non-alcoholic beverages. And my journey actually didn't start in a restaurant. So 7 years ago, back in 2018, I was working as a sales manager for Vintec Wine Chillers in Malaysia. It's actually a premium wine chiller brand that has a very strong presence in the Asia Pacific region. So through that role, I was already very close to the wine industry because I was dealing with the wine importers, distributors, retailers, and sommeliers on the daily basis. But to be very honest, selling electrical appliances wasn't exciting enough for me. So actually I became more curious about what was inside the bottles than how they were stored. So I started attending casual wine tastings in like supermarkets just to understand the wine world better. Actually, in the same year, I joined the Sommelier Association of Malaysia and attended the very first Malaysia Best Sommelier Championship that I witnessed. So a very good friend of mine now, Justin Ho, so he was performing the blind tasting on the stage, and it was actually a turning point for me because seeing someone who can actually identify the wine under very high pressure was very, very inspiring and actually sparked my interest in blind tasting. So basically, I started from zero. I had no formal background about wine, so I had the courage to just go and try. Doesn't matter if I failed. And during a pandemic, in 2020, then I had the chance to really sharpen my skills by joining the weekly blind tasting session with a group of wine enthusiasts. So actually, that period really changed everything for me. That actually helped me to increase my knowledge and my palate a lot. So how the Italian wines all started, it was because one day I was talking to my senior. I asked him about Italian wines. The response was, please don't go into Italian wine. It's a black hole. I didn't trust him. So I say, I was so curious. I say, nah, I'm gonna try it. Then, I started to explore. And that was the time actually I learned about the importance of acidity when it comes to food pairing. I started from Chianti Classico, Tuscany. So that was my first love in wine, Chianti Classico, very specifically. And then slowly moving on to like other regions, to the north, to Piedmont, and to the south, and beyond.
Well, actually, I think it's a very good hook to get wine professionals more interested in a specific region, saying that it's too complicated. Don't go there. It's too complicated. Because we're all wine geeks.
Yep.
We want more. We want to learn something harder.
Yep.
Okay. It's a great journey. So basically, it's thanks to that community that you found, you developed this big interest in wine. So it's, again, another testimony that the community is very, very important in our industry. All right, great. Thank you for the introduction. So 3 main key takeaways for today's conversations are, first of all, we're going to understand Malaysia as a country and also some cultural specificities of the Malaysian wine market, including some consumption habits and also key wine consumption cities. Second, we're going to identify key market players, distribution channels, and the Malaysian wine consumer profile. And third, we're going to gain some practical insights into opportunities, challenges, and long-term strategies for Italian wineries entering or expanding in Malaysia. So to start, let's just look at the country itself and the cultural context that influences the wine consumption in the country. So tell us about Malaysia as a country and as a market. What are the main urban or hospitality hubs that matter most for the food and beverage industry in general?
Okay, so first, Malaysia is a mid-sized but very strategic market in Southeast Asia, because of our geographical location. So we are neighboring to Singapore and down south, and then Thailand up north. So we have around 34 million of population. It's considered quite a young population. About 70% are actually this race called Malay, so they are mostly Muslims. Around 15% is Chinese, and then the rest are like Indians and some other indigenous race people from the East Malaysia and the West Malaysia. So as you can see, the majority people here are Muslims, so that's why the consumers who drink alcohol are relatively small. But we do have a strong urban mid-high class of people here. So from a wine and hospitality perspective, Kuala Lumpur, which is our capital city, is a key hub. So it's where all the fine dinings, wine bars, luxury hotels, and premium retails are concentrated at. And beyond KL, so Penang up north is actually very important for its food-driven culture. Even though it's just a very small island, but the culture of the food there is incredibly amazing. While Johor Bahru down south, the capital city of Johor State, actually benefits from the proximity to Singapore. And towards the East Malaysia, especially this state called Sabah, and then the capital city is called Kota Kinabalu, has growing potential in resorts and hotels due to our tourism, because it has a lot of nice nature reserve, and some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. The food and beverage scene there is actually growing. Yeah, so that's about our Malaysian market as a whole. So these are the four major cities that play a very big role in our market. If we move on to about the drinks industry, so I think this is almost the same for everywhere in the world. Beer remains the largest alcohol category by volume, and actually followed by spirits, especially like whiskey, cognac. But recently, there's a increasing in agave spirits like tequila, and actually for wine, it sits in the premium category. So it's actually a very small in volume, but it's gaining a lot of cultural relevance. So especially among young professionals and women. Actually, what's growing right now in our market is the premium by the glass programs. As you go into a lot of fine dining restaurants, you can see almost every establishments that actually offer wine by the glass, quite a wide range for you to choose. And even like champagne, apart from all those big houses, now we're seeing a lot of grower champagne in Malaysia. In general, the wines is actually getting in the lighter styles and more like a lifestyle driven kind of brands. And actually, what's losing momentum, those are very overly heavy, very powerful wines that people used to enjoy in the past. So, our current state of the wine market, okay, I would describe the Malaysian wine market. Actually, we are growing, of course, slowly, but very gradually. But in fact, it's actually, I would say, more like going through a structural shift. So the shifting in terms of habits. So in general, consumers here, they are drinking lesser, but of course, they are drinking better. So there are more curiosity, more willingness to explore different regions, different grape varieties. And even nowadays, people actually talk about producers, which wasn't something very particular, in the past. But now actually pay attention into more details. And actually, there's a stronger demand for wines that fit the food and also the occasion whenever they go to. So actually, this is very obvious because we are seeing more Burgundy wine drinkers nowadays as compared in the past. People just talk about Australian Shiraz or just like about Bordeaux wines. Of course, beyond that, wines from other lesser known regions. And then, of course, like when we talk about Italian wines in the past, people are very familiar with the Lambrusco, Moscato, all these very generic drinks. Of course, now we are moving towards lesser known regions like Friuli, Trentino, yeah, even like Abruzzo and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry for interrupting you. Here, I would like to ask actually. So, you told us about these categories that are more widespread in Malaysia. Many countries also have their own alcoholic beverage. For example, Japan has sake, Turkey has rakia, or like
Mhm.
in some Slavic countries, we've got also rakia and vodka. What about Malaysia? Does Malaysia historically have this kind of alcoholic beverage?
Yes, the icon, I would say the signature alcoholic beverage that represent Malaysia is tuak.
Can you spell it?
Tuak, tuak.
Mm-hmm.
So tuak is actually made from fermentation of rice. So you
Mm-hmm.
can say that it's like a little bit similar to sake. And this tuak is actually very popular in our East Malaysia, especially in Sabah and Sarawak. So tuak in the past, right, is heavily consumed by people who live in the East Malaysia, during their harvest. So they will actually drink a lot, to celebrate their harvest every year. So in the past, actually, these tuak are more like a homemade kind of beverage. So it was not in terms of quality, but in terms of quantity. But these days, the younger generation, they are more inspirational. So they actually start to make more like crafted tuak. So that means they're looking in better quality. In terms of availability, I think you can actually find them easily now in most of the fine dining restaurants, or maybe just like casual dining. It's actually part of the beverage program. Even the restaurant that I'm working in now, we're actually promoting one of the brand to actually pair with the caviar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very interesting. And also, another question I would like to ask you. So, you mentioned that 70% of the population in Malaysia identify themselves as Muslims, right? So, you already told us, of course, it does influence the alcohol beverage consumption. But for example, in our country, in Kazakhstan, also according to the statistics, also 70% of the population are considered Muslims. But in the same time, many people still drink. Like my family, for example, they identify themselves as Muslims. But both my parents, they used to drink. We don't have this kind of restriction. Like we're Muslims, so that is why we cannot drink.
Mhm.
Some of the people are much stricter, of course, but in many families, it's not the case for not drinking. So what about Malaysia? Like those 70% of Muslim population, they're not going to drink strictly, or some people still drink.
Of course, religion plays a very important role, especially to our Malay people who are actually born Muslim. So, in other words, is that I think it's more like cultural. So, I mean, alcoholic beverage is not part of culture, but I think in Malaysia it's more like a political kind of issue. They even try to ban alcohol, and that's why it explains why our taxes here is really high. Yeah, so they do make it actually very easy for us to import alcoholic beverage into Malaysia. Yeah, so actually the process will also take much longer than compared to our neighbor country like Singapore. Yeah, so if you want to import wine into Singapore market, I think it's very easy, but Malaysia is much more challenging. Okay, so maybe say 70% of the population here is Muslim. Probably I would say 5 or maybe 10% they will drink casually, but most of them actually drink very privately, not in the public, of course. Somewhere hiding, yeah, not everyone can see behind the closed door.
Okay, got it. And about the import and taxation, I'm still going to interview people from Malaysia, and I think we can talk about the politics, the imports, and so on in some other conversations. And for now, to understand this cultural aspect, and food plays a central role in Malaysian culture, like everywhere in our daily lives. So, how does the country's multi cuisine food culture, like Chinese, Malay, Indian, now also Western, how do all these cuisines influence wine choices and pairing preferences for people?
So food is everything to us in Malaysia. So it's like, it's a very huge role in how we choose our wine here. So maybe I break down into the different cuisine that we're going to talk about.
Mhm.
So for myself, I'm actually most familiar with Chinese food. And for us in the central part of Malaysia, especially KL, is where all the Cantonese food dominates. All right. So the cooking style actually involve very high heat and bold flavors. So interestingly, most of the Chinese restaurants here is actually cockage free. So wine lovers like us often bring some of our best bottles, even some of the wines that actually we want to explore to actually pair with the food. So it's more versatile, actually more free. I mean, like it's not restricted to any kind of wine. It can be anything. But of course, if you're talking about more of the fine dining Chinese restaurants nowadays, it's getting much more popular in KL. Actually, their cooking is a little bit more, how to say, restrained. So it's not this like very high heat cooking, bold flavors. If you understand Cantonese, the Dai Chao style, use very high heat with wok hei. So they're actually a little bit different. So these restaurants actually they are a little bit more careful in wine selections. These are actually all the young up and coming young chefs. So their selections of wines are also a little bit more different. So they are more into like lighter styles of wines. I think less food driven but more mineral driven. That's why you can actually find, for example, some volcanic soy wine like from Tenerife, Spain, Canary Island. You can actually find them in these modern Chinese restaurants. But if you're talking about traditional Chinese restaurants, I think still bold wines, Bordeaux, Rioja. Then if you want to talk about like Italian wines, maybe those are coming from Puglia and Sicily are very popular in Chinese restaurants. And then if you're talking about Malay and Indian cuisines, of course, this involve there's a lot chili and curry, so it's a little bit more spicy, even with the kind of spicy heat. It's actually more popular towards the aromatic wines, white wines, because some of them can be off dry style, even like sparkling wine. So I think sparkling wine, for example, like Prosecco, works really well in some of our southern Indian restaurants here in Malaysia, right? And of course, for some of the modern Malay restaurants, for example, like German or Alsatian Riesling, or even Gewürztraminer, Grüner Veltliner, all these wines work really well. And whereas for Western and modern fusion dining. They were actually more varied, so it can be any kind of wines from the old world or even newer. Even though Australian and French wines, they still dominate. However, there's one very interesting thing that is happening now in Malaysia. Italian restaurants are actually booming right now. So we are seeing almost every new Italian restaurants opening in every few months. In general, Malaysians, we love pizza and pasta. So as Italian food culture grows, I think Italian wines naturally will just follow. So I think overall, the well-educated Malaysian consumers, they respond better to food-friendly wines because they understand the concept or the philosophy behind it. While the older generations, maybe in their 40s to 60s, they still prefer to a little bit more powerful, more oak-driven stuff kind of wine.
Okay, great. That was a very nice breakdown. Thank you so much. It was very detailed. Okay, so you already touched on the consumers just a bit. So I think it's a good segue to move on to our next topic, the market players and consumers. So first of all, let's begin with the consumers. How would you describe the typical Malaysian wine drinker today in terms of age, maybe profession or lifestyle, and also the level of wine knowledge, maybe?
Okay, so I think wine drinkers in Malaysia make up of like a young generation between 28 years old to 50 years old. Of course, urban based, talking about people who live in big cities like KL, professionally employed, for example, like medical field, finance, tech, of course, hospitality like us. Yep. Yeah, recently actually I met a lot of wine drinkers. They are from the engineering. Just a little bit of sharing. They say, daily job at the daily life is a little bit boring. So they would like to try to learn new things, something that is more fun, a bit more adventurous. So that's why they actually go into wine. You can actually see the trend from the WSCT classes that are actually offered in KL. So they are all the students. They are mainly from the professional field. So a lot of doctors, even like lawyers. So all these consumers, they are actually well educated because they will actually attend classes, right? While there are many still like very much like exploring into different things. For example, some of the young people who start their journey drinking all the natural wines. It's like a trend now, even though the trend is slowly fading. But I think in KL here is still going strong because we have our friends who are actually kind of heavily promoting natural wines. What they share is actually the curiosity and openness, I would say, because they will try to understand the wines without feeling timid. So I think the wine is pretty much more like a lifestyle here in our country rather than like a daily consumption.
Okay, thank you. Same for our country because we're also historically, it's not a part of our daily diet, let's say. Yeah, I think the same. Okay, and from a taste perspective, you already mentioned that older generation, they kind of prefer some classic wines and also some classic regions and maybe fruitier, sometimes bolder styles. What about nowadays? Do Malaysian consumers also lean towards some lighter and fresher styles today, like same as in other markets now, or they still prefer full-bodied wines, sweeter styles? Some of them you already mentioned too. So how should wineries adapt their positioning and portfolio to match those taste preferences?
Yeah, as I explained earlier, so older generation, of course, because they started drinking all these full body, slightly more fruitful wines in their early days. So it's a little bit hard for them to change their taste profile. Even though I see some of them, they are actually willing to adapt a little bit. So they don't want to drink the same thing over and over again. So they try to shift. Say, for example, Burgundy. So, from Bordeaux to Burgundy is actually a big leap. But that willingness to actually change, I think that's very encouraging. But of course, I mean, like people who started drinking wines maybe in the last 5 years, right? So it's totally different kind of market now because we are seeing a lot much lighter style wines that is easily available in Malaysia. Of course, thanks to our friends who bring them into our market, even though it's not easy, in terms of business perspective, because these wines much more harder to sell because you need to spend more effort to actually explain, to do more education, to let people accept this kind of taste profile. These wines are actually, I think, it's quite easily to accept now because they are more fresher, more lighter, and more balanced. So I think in general, the taste profile for most people has changed, especially those wines with very good acidity. There's a big opportunity for Italy, right? Because many of the Italian wines sits in this kind of space. It's also very happy for me to promote the Italian wines because nowadays white wine drinkers are getting more and more than the red wine drinkers. Fits perfectly for the Italian wines. There are so many different types of interesting and delicious white wines from Italy, right? So yeah, I think in general, maybe wineries should actually focus in this to avoid, sending those like very big, very highly extracted wines. Instead, they actually maybe need to look for like versatility, drinkability, and of course, food compatibility. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And you already mentioned our friends who import wines. So let's talk about them. Who are the key importers, distributors, and maybe also retailers? Could you share some of the examples, like which channels they focus on? Like maybe some of them they focus more on trade, some of them they focus more on retail, and also what type of wines they're focused on bringing into the market, more like family owned or more like well known brands and so on.
All right, so give an example. This friend of mine is actually very focused in grower champagne. In the past, we do not know anything about grower champagne, so these are like a little bit more boutique, smaller production. So they are focusing in, of course, a lot in French wines, Burgundy, but some other wines from Spain. Say, for example, just I mentioned, Canary Island wines from Tenerife, which is much more mineral driven. So this importer is actually considered as like a mid-scale kind of size. Of course, our current market is still dominated by the very big scale kind of wine importers. They work very closely with big brands that actually require a lot of volumes. Whereas for this importer that actually focus more boutique wines, they're actually focusing more on trade. So they work very closely with fine dining restaurants, especially Michelin star restaurant. Actually, I work very closely with him. He's a friend of mine. He supplies his wines to almost all of the Michelin star restaurant in Kuala Lumpur except one. He always tell me that except one, so he feels like he hasn't worked hard enough. He say one day at the end he will actually try to sell his wine to this restaurant.
Sorry, what is the name of the company?
Okay, the name of the company is called Boutiq Wine.
Boutique Wine.
Yeah,
Okay.
Bouttik. So he even like imports wine from China. For example, Yunnan, Shangri-La, Ningxia, Yantai of Shandong.
Mm-hmm.
So I think China wines also is gaining a lot of tractions nowadays in our market here. And in terms of Italian wines, it's actually quite interesting that we do have like, okay, I actually wanted to say three companies that specialize exclusively in Italian wines, but maybe there would be a few more. It's just that they are much more smaller scale. They just focus in like very small portfolio. But this one particular company is called With Love from Italy. They have most complete Italian portfolios in Malaysia. So they are representing wines from 12 different regions of Italy. So these specialists actually play a very important role because Italian wines require explanation, education. So it's more than just normal distribution. So in terms of volume, because when you have a big portfolio, then you have to sort of like balance out your distribution to on-trade and of course to off-trade, to retails, to supermarkets.
All right, got it. Thank you. So, with this market context in mind, let's move on to Italian wines specifically. Again, you already started talking about that, so let's continue that conversation from here. How do Italian wines perform in general in Malaysia compared to wines from France, Australia, or other major exporting countries? So, which Italian regions or styles are currently the strongest? And why do they resonate with Malaysian consumers so much, in your opinion?
I would say Italy performs really well in Malaysia, especially in restaurants. Judging on how many Italian restaurants that we have currently in Malaysia, so they are really performing well. But of course, it still has a very big competition with wines from France in terms of prestigious. Because every time when we talk about French wine, people think about prestige, and Australian wines in terms of familiarity because they are much closer to us here. So what Italy does very well is actually they offer very good diversity across price points, styles, or to drink on different kind of occasions. Wines that actually perform very strong in Malaysia, like Prosecco, are very easily accepted by almost everyone, every wine drinkers in Malaysia. White wine like Pinot Grigio, Chianti. If you talk about premium wines, of course, always Barolo, Barbaresco, and Amarone. I think in general, Southern Italian wines work much better in our market, especially those wines from Puglia and probably a little bit from Sicily. Because I think these wines resonate to us. They are naturally food friendly. They actually have a strong sense of place because, in our country here, we prefer something a little bit more fruit forward in general. So wines from Puglia, from the southern Italy, actually make up a lot of volume that we sell in Malaysia.
Okay, got it. If you had to talk about one Italian wine region with strong and untapped potential in Malaysia now, and one region or style that overrepresented already, so which would they be and why?
Hmm. I think one region with very strong potential that is still very fresh or unfamiliar in our Malaysian market, I would say, is Campania. Because I think Campania, they have a very great indigenous grape variety like the Aglianico. And of course, some of the white wines like Greco, Falangina. So I think it's something that I would like to look forward to. And I think these wines are really value for money. And of course, Campania is very popular with their food. So I believe these wines are very food friendly and would actually work well in our Malaysian market, especially in the Italian restaurants. I think on the other hand, some classic regions are very crowded here already in Malaysia, like Veneto, maybe like Chianti or even like Puglia. Explains why they are crowded because they sell really well. It's not just they are weak, but because now we are spoiled by choices, so people tend to try to explore things that is very new to them.
Got it. Thank you. And what some practical advice would you give Italian wineries who want to build long, sustainable presence in Malaysian market?
So based on my observation and experience, when it comes to business, first of all, you have to choose the right partner that can actually work for long term. Because distribution matters more than reputation. Because secondly, you have to be very patient because Malaysia is not a quick win market. Because it rewards when you have the consistency. Things in Malaysia tend to move slower, but there's a growth that goes very gradually, but not as fast probably as you compare to other countries. Of course, third, to invest in education. Masterclass, for example, actually can do much more than discount. The experience is actually more valuable for consumers in general. Of course, finally, we have to understand the local pricing realities. As I explained earlier, the taxes are really high. That's why the wineries have to sort of like think very carefully about which wines make more business sense to export into our market.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the insights. And that was a very nice conversation. It's time for us to wrap up. But before doing so, we usually ask our guests three rapid fire questions to finalize our conversation. It's like a quick review of everything that we talked about. So the first question would be, what is one key thing Italian wineries should always keep in mind when entering the Malaysian market? Well, it's almost the same as my last question to you before. So,
All right, so I think Malaysia, we are relationship-driven country, food-driven market, and actually success comes from long-term commitment. So it's not just for short-term sales. To look for long-term.
okay, thank you. Again, as a wine professional, as a person who works closely with wines, if you had a choice to choose one Italian region, sub-region, or wine style or grape variety with the strongest potential in Malaysia and the one that you would like to drink more often in Malaysia for a good price, what wine would it be and why?
I would say food-friendly, value-for-money wine from Sicily because I think they offer great balance, great characters, and also very versatile with our Malaysian food in general. Yeah, not just local, but also, of course, more than beyond Italian food.
Okay, and to finish on a personal note and on a very practical note too, what are some of your favorite wine or maybe beer or even spirits spots in KL?
Okay. So my favorite wine bar in KL was Park 90. Unfortunately, they are currently closed, but they will reopen at a new location in the second half of 2026, because last time they actually were operated in a hotel. So now they want to operate independently. Another excellent spot is Racines, KL. They actually offer very premium wines by the glass, so you can even taste a glass of Aman Rousseau by the glass, also including other lesser known regions and grape varieties. And of course, Chim by Chef Noom, the restaurant where I'm currently working at. We offer a mid-size but carefully curated wine by the glass selection that actually pairs very beautifully with the modern Thai cuisine. For beer, we do have quite a few selections because the craft beer is gaining a lot of attractions. We do have like craft beer imported from overseas, but we are also very proud we do have our local brewers. So currently we have quite a few. One example is called the Farmers Bar. They have a few outlets across KL and Klang Valley. Yep, that's it. And then there are more hidden gems like cocktail bars. There are more to discover. I think I might need at least half an hour to name them all.
Okay, we do not have another half an hour, but we will talk about Malaysia again. And I think other guests, they can share their favorite spots too. So before we close up, how can our listeners connect with you?
Okay, you can actually connect to me through my social media platform. So either on Facebook or Instagram. Shall I put a link here? Yeah.
Yeah, we will put all the links in the show notes so
Okay.
people can find everything easily. All right. Thank you again, Casey. That was a very nice conversation. It was a very nice introduction to the Malaysian market. So thank you so much for all the insights and thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome, Rosa. Also, thank you for having me here to share with everyone. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Asia Wine Market. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your fellow wine professionals wherever you get your pods. To stay updated on upcoming wine events, market insights, visit italianwinepodcast.com. Catch you in the next episode. And until then, cheers from Asia.